So it's September 2025. How did that happen? Where the hell has our summer gone? But never mind that. What is going on right now with my independent feature film, Gardener's Planet? So for the last few days, I have been working on this small alien action sequence that happens in the film. And I have to say, for a long time, this small alien action sequence has made me feel like a really bad filmmaker. As during the writing of this, during the shooting of it, and during the editing of it, it has just presented me this small scene with so many big problems that I just have not had a lot of answers for. So, if you don't know, I am making an independent feature film called Gardener's Planet. That's right. I started shooting originally in 2022 for 4 weeks, then we did another 2 weeks in 2023, and we did another about a week's worth of shooting in 2024 to finally wrap the project. So the sequence I've been struggling with comes near the end of the film, where one of our amazing actors, Gemma Curran, is kind of fighting the aliens. And how would you describe it? It's one of those scenes that sometimes when you're making a film that you don't plan to write, but you find yourself writing it anyway in order for your film to keep going forward and keep it making sense. So in the film Gardener's Planet, as we move from the end of Act 2 into Act 3, we needed Gemma Curran's character of Maria to have a moment where she basically met Sean Donegan's character of Stanley while fighting aliens. So basically just between Maria and Stanley, it was just an intersection of the characters where they meet for a brief period and then they come apart again. So we initially shot a version of this scene in 2022 as what it was initially, which was a character dialogue scene. But honestly, with everything else that we had going on in that block, it was never as fully planned and never fully envisioned as what it should have been. There was just so many other bigger and more complex things going on, and that's why this scene always makes me feel like a bit of a bad filmmaker, because like I say, it wasn't as planned, as envisioned as it should have been. But I also knew from that point in the story at the time that it wasn't really what we needed. 15 minutes before the end of the movie, when you're trying to push and push and push your narrative just towards the climax, to have a scene then when two characters are meeting for the first time and having a dialogue scene between them for the first time wasn't really what you wanted energy-wise or story-wise at that point in the movie, and it was kind of just unsatisfying from a story point of view. So we did come back then in 2023, and I had redesigned the scene of, instead of being a character dialogue scene, it was going to be more of a montage scene. And I did shoot some shots of Gemma in 2023 for this kind of new version of the scene. But the way the schedule was organized, it meant that Sean and Gemma were unfortunately never down at the same time. So we could never get them in the same frame, which is something I always enjoy doing, getting the actors' faces in the same frame. And then worst of all, when Sean Donegan came down a few days later after Gemma had gone, I just forgot to get the shots of him that I intended to get for the sequence. So now, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And also, when we had shot the scene in 2022, we were using the rubber mask aliens. So we couldn't now use any of that footage because I had already decided that the aliens were going to be CGI by 2023. And so, yeah, we couldn't use any or a lot of that footage from 2022. And a lot of that ended up going in the bin, unfortunately. So basically, when all was said and done, I had some footage from 2023, which I was happy with, of Gemma looking. I had some footage of Stanley I was able to use from another fight that I was able to cut in. And I just essentially had to throw out the script and Frankenstein it together. And the footage I shot of Gemma in 2023 was generic enough that it did kind of look like she was looking at Stanley. And it had the beats that I needed in terms of her seeing Stanley arrive, seeing him fighting, and then see him get attacked and the shock. And so I just Frankenstein it together, and it's actually worked pretty well as a montage, and it works in terms of the narrative sequence now of the film. So now that I know the rough shape of the scene, it's time to start figuring out the VFX. So we've done some shots in my bedroom, but some shots, for the wider shots especially, makes sense just to do them in the woods, I think. And the two shots that we need, one shot of the alien approaching, a kind of a wide shot, and also the shot of the alien dropping to the ground after it's been hit by the rock. That's kind of tricky. I don't know, I don't have a lot of, I've done so many aliens. I know that kind of stuff doesn't always work really well because it's going to be on the ground, the alien's going to go in there, so you've got some kind of impact. You need some shadow, you need the correct shadow, you'll need some kind of motion blur, and it's hard to get all that stuff right. So 2 more shots on the shopping list. It really feels like a shopping list as well, just trying to get through it. Yeah, God, I'm really tired this morning, actually. I'm still excited to do it, I'm excited, but, you can do something, you can be excited to do something, but you can still feel tired at the same time. So we'll do those shots, we'll get them in. It's just so much work. That's really what I want to say. It's so much work, and that's why I'm doing these videos, because it's so hard to articulate the amount of work to constantly, fine tune it, because all these action moments, they're all very specific. Action scenes need to be very specific. The audience need to know where they are geography wise. It has to be a close-up or a wide shot. It can't just be one or the other. It has to be specific. And you'll notice it yourself when you put them into the timeline, if the shots aren't working quite well. I mean, you can say that for any scene, but certainly these action scenes have been a big learning curve for me. So let's do these 2 shots anyway and get back here, because we're kind of on the clock today. Okay, let's go. Okay, so we got those 2 shots. I really don't know, this whole section, as I talked about, has just been really piecemeal. I mean, at times it feels like all the action scenes have been really piecemeal, but this has just hugely changed the shape, the structure. So we're just trying to get a few shots that work, that, it's essentially a montage. So you just need 1 or 2 seconds, in some cases, of every shot, 1 second of a shot that works. And if you can get that 1 second that works, whether it's the alien approaching or the alien hitting the ground or the alien turning, which I really like that shot, then the sequence will work. So we just need 1 second that works. So it shouldn't be a lot to ask, just to get, 2 shots, 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds. That's all we need. So yeah, we've got those. But every bit matters, even if it is only a second or 2 seconds. It all matters, because it all has a subconscious effect of, keeping the audience in the film, keeping them in the world of the film, and not breaking that bubble where they fall out and they start to remember, oh, it's just a silly movie again. Once your story starts, once the lights go down, once the story starts, you want to maintain a level of quality and engagement and entertainment. And, those seconds add up to minutes, and those minutes add up to hours. Well, in our case, an hour and a half, 75 minutes, that's what it is. But yeah, so it can just take a while to build up those seconds, but they're pretty cool. I think we can make it work. Do you know what I mean? Those 2 shots. And if it doesn't, we just come back. That's how it works. We come up with a plan, we do it, we see if it works, we find some of it works, some of it doesn't, then we adjust it, we do it again, and by the 2nd or 3rd time, hopefully it's working and the sequence will work. Wait a minute, she's turning to her right. Should I put an alien in there? And the other thing I get while I'm up here is another plate for the sky to replace the previous one that I shot in scene 70. As I'm leaving, I stopped to look at this sign, which I haven't really been looking at before, and in reading it, it turns out that these woods I've been filming in for the last 6 months have a bit of a dark history in terms of the Irish War of Independence, where Irish would bring people accused of being British spies up here and shoot them and bury them in the woods. And apparently they were finding bodies here up until the 1950s. So this is me working in Premiere Pro on the whip hand that I shot earlier. I could have easily made this easier on myself by making it a static shot of the alien approaching, but in order to keep the energy of the scene up, I felt a whip pan would be more appropriate. So as the camera whip pans to the left, I need the alien coming in from the left and hitting a mark and staying in that mark as much as possible. So I added some directional blur onto the alien, and I think it came out pretty good, and I think it adds to the scene. Look, I have to say, even though I definitely do get tired of this because I've been doing it for so long, doing the CGI in this way is an incredible opportunity to, fine tune the film. Even though in the Gemma scene it's a montage and every scene is kind of standalone and it doesn't need that connective tissue, there have been lots of other examples in the film where being able to just go and do an extra shot and get more of that connective tissue, either for the continuity, the emotional continuity, or just the motion continuity, has been hugely beneficial. So whether I need an extra shot of an alien turning or an alien walking off frame, maybe that I didn't get time for during principal photography, has been fantastic, And I guess I'm lucky as well, because a lot of the scenes that the aliens appear in are just in the woods, so it's not like there's a difficult background for me that I'm not able to replicate here while I'm back up in Cork. And I've spoken before, about how important these connective shots are to me. And we shot a whole extra night last July 2024, to get more of those connective shots for our plant monster sequence. And it's so vital, whether it's a dialogue scene or whether it's an action scene, that you're getting these shots so that when you're putting the scene together, you have the beats that you need to edit and screen the film effectively for an audience. That if you have a moment of suspense, maybe you have a wide shot where the camera is a little bit further away just before the danger arrives, or maybe just from the point of view of basic continuity, that he hits the ground and in the next shot you have his head looking up, but you didn't actually get his head looking up. Those are the vital shots that really make sequences go from a scene to a scene that's working. And you can still put all those shots together, but if you're missing those extra beats, the scene isn't going to be as effective as it potentially could be. And if you haven't seen that video that I made last July, do check it out here. And this shot 5 of Stanley hitting the alien, was probably the most complex to do of the whole shot. So I decided to keep the shoulder from 2022 and replace the alien, the practical alien, with the CGI alien. So the first thing I needed to do was get the alpha masks of the shoulder moving from the right to the left. And I got those alpha masks in Wonder Studios. Then I just bring them into Blender, bring those alpha masks together, which are single frames, and put them into a sequence. Then here we are now in After Effects, and I'm just going to bring those alpha masks in. I'm going to put them on top and just clearly label it alpha, and then bring in the original shot, put that below it. And essentially you're just telling the computer that you want to separate these two things, and because they're shot at the same dimensions, the same frame rate, the computer will be able to separate those two things for you. And then adding in a blue screen, and hey presto, you have it. Then I also shot an alien of me just being hit and falling to the ground, and then I'm going to bring those two elements, the alien falling to the ground and the shoulder going right to left, into Premiere and just composite them together as best I can. Again, it's a bit of a piecemeal Frankenstein job, but with a bit of color correction, a bit of blur and the right positioning, hopefully it works. So thank you so much for watching. And you know, this has been a really great project to work on. And while it's sucked up so much of my life, and I have mixed feelings on it sometimes from a personal point of view, from an artistic and creative point of view, I think it's been really a cool combination of my theater work and my animation work. And I say theater because, you know, I've spoken before in the videos about how I feel I moved my actors more around the set than maybe some other filmmakers do. And also I say animation because I can see, like when I made Poxy Bleeding Shop, I was always looking for more opportunities as I went through the editing to bulk up more of my action sequences and put in more shots. And I kind of feel I'm doing the same now. So like in that action sequence in Poxy Bleeding Shop where Bono's killed, there was definitely one or two extra shots that I put in there, you know, to make the action scenes feel a bit bigger and stronger. But I will say doing the motion capture work is far easier than doing the frame by frame animation, which Poxy Bleeding Shop was. Once you're set up for it, obviously, you know, that's the big thing, getting set up for 4K motion capture. But once you've done that, you know, you're kind of off to the races. At least that was my feeling. I think this might be Ireland's first ever major motion capture film as well. I mean, certainly to the extent that we've done it. I don't think anyone has ever done that extent before in this country, so maybe, and that's kind of cool. And the fact I've done it a lot in my bedroom as well is kind of wild. And of course, you know, it's not a coincidence. Every project is informed by your experience on the previous project. But I guess it's just interesting now, as the project comes to a close, quote unquote close, and I even hesitate in using that word, it's interesting to look back on the experience now from the point of view of a bigger picture. And maybe it's a warning to you, on one hand at least, that you do need to have plans and schedules and call sheets. But also on the other hand, we did have plans and schedules and call sheets. But sometimes just things didn't go the way I wanted them to go, you know. And at the end of the day, cinema is a very creative and volatile thing. And things will change and plans will not work. And I guess what I've learned is that sometimes you just have to go with the natural way of things. Even if it's not what you originally planned, even if it's not what you originally envisioned, there is a natural way of things which you just have to have somewhat a trust in that it'll work, rather than trying to force something which is unnatural, you know? That's a big thing of what I take away from all this. So it has been a long, hard, strange journey. But thank you for watching. But we are getting there and we're still going. And dare I say, there is light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, do please like and subscribe. And we will be back with another video very soon.